All right, so we're in Central Park in the heart of New York City, not far away from where the World Chess Championship is going on right now. And I'm here with Milo and Mira, right? Did you guys know that the brightest chess brains in the world are in the city right now?
Yeah.
You did? What's your relationship to chess?
Well, my brother started playing it and I thought that's very interesting. I'd like to do that. I'd like to be like my brother and play chess too.
Oh, so you're the one who got him to play chess?
Yeah, my dad and my grandfather, they really like chess, and I started to play when I was really young, so I just got more and more into it.
And do you know who's playing the World Chess Championship now?
No, I don't. But I think it's really cool that it's happening in New York.
Yeah. You think so too? Do you like that the chess players are here?
Yeah. I think it inspires kids to play chess and like a good thinking game.
All right. So maybe one of these two guys will be a world chess champion one time. But Knut, let's go back to you for round 3 with Magnus Carlsen and Sergey Karjakin.
With these chess kids, the scene is set for the third day of these Chess World Championships 2016. We hope and believe that Brooklyn Bridge, New York City, Manhattan, Fulton Center, and Magnus Carlsen and Sergey Karjakin will be able to play the first decisive game of this World Championship. My name is Knut Skeie Solberg. I will be your host, and I'm happy to say that excellent Judith Polgar will be our expert. So nice to have you here.
Hi.
Are you ready for day 3?
Absolutely, I'm very much looking forward. Both players had a rest day yesterday, and I'm pretty sure both players, with full of energy, they try to fight out today's game.
And Peter Daggers from chess.com, there's an expression saying, third time's the charm. Do you think it will happen today?
Maybe, yeah. Although, I'm also the chess player that knows that a drawn game can also be interesting. We have seen maybe 2 games not that interesting, and even the players acknowledge that, even apologize for it to the huge crowd after game 2. But some of the most amazing chess games in chess history have ended in a draw. So let's not forget about that.
Seeing the chess kids in Central Park, Judith, and seeing the kids coming here to the venue, it is really nice.
It is very impressive, and I'm really happy that not only adults and older people are coming, but families are coming over, where actually they have a game which the whole family likes. I think it is very important. It's a common language for families, for generations, and it is really lovely to see kids playing outside and being here, looking around, waving into the studio. So I think it's really fantastic.
And it makes me think of the clip we just have been seeing, the 3-year-old kid from Russia playing Karpov in a Russian TV show. Tell us a bit about that, Judith.
I think it's really amazing. He was such a lovely kid. I advise everybody to see this clip because it is such an experience to see. It's fantastic, and he was playing against Karpov, a chess game there, and which amazed me very much. When he was already short on time, Karpov was kind of pitying him and said, well, maybe you would like to get a draw? I would like to offer a draw to you. And the boy was very clearly ignoring it and said, no. And later on, he lost the game, and immediately he cried. And it was very natural, but I think it's a very serious sign for kids when they reject a draw offer from such a big historical person. And also when they cry, it is very obvious because it hurt them so much. But he was clearly an amazing kid, and maybe we will hear of him in the future.
Peter, what does this say about the game of chess?
Well, first, to add to this remark, what I thought also was very nice is that you could actually see in Karpov's eyes that he was also a bit emotionally, actually, when the kid was starting to cry and he asked for his mama. So he was like a good grandfather, also pitying a little bit. That was great to see. Yeah, it's fantastic. I mean, this is literally chess being played for all ages. I mean, there is in Holland actually a former politician who is now 105. He cannot go to the chess club anymore. His name is Johan van Hulst. He's a guest at the Wijk aan Zee tournament every year and gives a speech there at the closing every year. And he still enjoys the game as well. He cannot really play a game at the club anymore, but it's literally between 3 and 105, played in all ages. That's amazing.
There's a lot of people enjoying the game of chess, and there's a lot of people enjoying the World Championship. Let's see how Game 2 went.
I didn't play very interesting and black was completely fine.
Today was a decent game with black. I didn't experience any difficulties, so all is well.
It's really nice that so many people has come. We made two more or less solid draws. So I believe we would have some fun games later on.
Sitting in the playing hall, I wasn't aware that there were so many people here, but again, yeah, thank you all for coming. It's much appreciated.
The place is nice, and maybe I would come back here in the future just to have more time and to see New York more.
This graphics tells me two things, Judith. It has been 2 draws, and there still is a lot of chess to be played.
Absolutely, it's going to be a 12-game match. That's the maximum they're going to play. And if it's only tied, then they are going to have playoff. But of course, some people say that it should be longer, as in the older days, 24 games or something like that. I think 12 games can be enough, but of course, if there will be quite a few draws still to go, and then one of the players wins, then it can be felt that maybe it's going to be short, but definitely it's going to be from day to day with more tension, because you see more near to the end.
Before the World Championship, these two guys have played 16 draws out of 22 games. What tells you that today won't be a draw again?
Well, of course, it can very much possible that it's going to be a draw today also. But I have the feeling that seeing the press conference after the second game, I had really much the feeling that Magnus is already warmed up and really would like to punch the first one in game 3. Actually, he was so eager that he was kind of saying that why do we have a free day on Sunday, right? When he was already very much in the mood to play again. While Karjakin said that he was happy with the free day. And well, I think there is a good chance that it's going to be a decisive game. But for sure, I think Magnus is already prepared to take maybe more risk, or at least for sure he wants to play a long game and try to grab his chances.
For sure, the world of chess are respecting these two guys. Among those, the Grand Masters.
Pamplona 2004. I was one of the oldest players that time. Rafael Vaganyan played, a lot of young players played, Sergey Karjakin, Shahriar Mamedyarov, which showed great success lately. And I played black with Sergey, and he already that time he played a novelty compared to Kasparov game and had pressure. I had to defend very well to hold my own. I managed to win that tournament, but Sergey was second, which he was 14 or something, and then half a month he won the vacancy B. So already that time he was already a very mature player. He has a very kind personality, and he's very stubborn. His tenacity in worst position is incredible. How he played last World Cup and candidates. He saved so many difficult games. It's really unbelievable. So to deserve this right to play a match. One of his strongest. He's very balanced player, but it's one of his strongest. Yeah, and normally players are not able to withstand the pressure of Magnus for 7 hours or so. Sergey, I think, is able to do it. Yeah, one of the few players who is able to play a lot of games with Magnus. Magnus is a favorite. Definitely, Magnus is a favorite. Yeah. He should do his best, you know. Yeah, he should do his best, try to play his best chess. He should focus on it. Yeah. I came to a point when it already became a matter of destiny, I think. I did most what could do mere mortal, yeah? But I don't know, I didn't become. Well, it's hard to say. Some players became, some players who I believe deserved to become, didn't become. Who knows?
And here we see Magnus already at the board. There he actually left his seat. But this means, Judith, Magnus means business today. He's early.
Well, absolutely. I think he came today here to win the game. That's the feeling I have. And so far, every little step which we see on the screen, it gives me this impression. And we're going to see how Karjakin is going to be arriving to the game. But I'm really very positive about it, that Magnus has his ideas of today's game.
Because already, right after game 2, he said that he didn't want the rest day. He wanted to play right away. He was eager already then. And yeah.
Yeah, it's actually it is very interesting for a chess player during a tournament, during a match. When do you have the free day? Sometimes it can come in the best moment because you really had a long game, very tiring game, and you relieve, you have some rest, recharge your batteries. But I think this was not the case in Magnus's case. Like I think Karjakin was very happy with the free day to relax and grab his thoughts. But for Magnus, I had the feeling that he very much is full of energy, and he would want it to play immediately, because sometimes when you get this status in your mind and physically and mentally, then actually you're very happy to play the game afterwards when you get this energy flow. And I think he really had that, but I'm pretty sure that he is ready to play today.
We were talking about how it is a long way to go, but could this game anyway be decisive in some way?
If the game is decided, if any of the players will win the game, of course, it's a crucial moment of a match, which we are going to see and experience more crucial moments of the match. Whenever there is a decisive game, it does influence the match very much, and those are the biggest tests. How the players mentally prepared, and are they able to switch and kick back immediately the day after. And actually both players are famous for, especially Magnus, that sometimes he makes a very slow start in a tournament, few draws and nothing special, and then suddenly he got angry or something, and then he wins 5 games in a row, or even loses a game, and then the day after he comes with more energy, with more inspiration, with the drive he has and focuses and gets angry, and then he punches back, and then he wins a few games in a row. It happened with him in quite a few tournaments. So obviously he's a player who, even if he's losing a game, it doesn't mean that he's going to be encouraged. The contrary, he will be very angry lion and bite back.
In Chennai, when Magnus played his first World Championships, like Karjakin is doing now, he seemed very nervous at the start. And some said that Vishy Anand didn't attack too much, and then Magnus got comfortable, and then he got back at Anand. Do you think Magnus learned from that and want to do the same with Karjakin, or the opposite with Karjakin now?
Well, actually, I think it was game 3 when Magnus played with white, and
And then we have Karjakin here as well. So now they're both in 5 minutes before 2 o'clock.
yes, I think it seems like Karjakin also came to fight very heavily. He's ready for the fight, I think. I think it was good for him to have a free day. That's my feeling about it. And but also I think he's kind of nervous, I must say.
But do you think Magnus want to show who's the boss at an early stage here?
I think actually he's very eager to do so, yes. I think actually he will be not happy at all with the draw today because he has the intention to win the game. But he knows it exactly that it's not going to be an easy game. I think he's just focusing really to be able to play calmly and focused and concentrated the whole game, because it's very clear that he's not counting on Karjakin making a serious mistake or blunder. He knows exactly that in such a match, I mean, really, a lot of small things has to happen the way.
Okay, then I think we will go to reporter Kaja in the field.
Yeah, Knut, I'm in the fish tank. The game is about to start. We're a few minutes away. And as always, we have to be really quiet because both players are here getting ready to start game 3. They've been sitting here for a while now, and wow, it's kind of intense in here right now. And they both seem to be thinking in their own minds. And I think they're both eager to get this game started. So let's get back to you guys.
How is it, Judith, for the player to sit like this for minutes?
It is stressy, but I think by now when they sit down at the table, they look at some things and the people and photographer possibly, but I can't say that they really see them because they are already in their thoughts. And really, actually, they are, I think, getting impatient that the next few minutes is passing and they can really start the first move and figure out what will happen, what kind of opening will appear on the board.
Judith, can you explain to us what kind of room they're sitting in? They're sitting in a glass room, right?
It is a pretty big room, I must say. I've been there myself and tested the board with Karjakin in a blitz game. It is pretty big. I think it's very comfortable. Both players choose their own chair, which they want to sit for the whole World Championship match. It has 2 arbiters in following the game. There is a glass on both sides where they cannot see out, but the audience who is visiting the playing area, they can see and they can see the players. And I think this is actually, it's comfortable for both sides. Also for the guests, where they can talk in the meanwhile while they're looking through the glass. But it's also very convenient for the players that there's not much of a distraction and they can really focus only on the chess game which they are playing.
Magnus had white the first day, then he opened with the d4. Do you think he will repeat that today?
I think he will start with the d-pawn, yes, d4, or he might be starting with knight f3. What would surprise me quite a bit if he would start with e4 move today, but you never know what kind of preparation he made against Karjakin for game 3.
How will Karjakin enter this game mentally, you think? We've been talking about Magnus now, how he will attack. And what do you think about Karjakin?
Well, first of all, he has to get out of the opening the way he feels more comfortable with, and he's hoping, of course, that within his preparation, that there will be no surprises or huge surprises. And then we'll see how much time one of the players is going to think first, more or less.
And there we have the first move.
And there we have the first move, e4, which is a kind of surprise for me. Yeah, they had quite a few games in e4 also in their games. And e5, the same, Karjakin is replying the same move as Carlsen was yesterday. Knight f3, knight c6. Most likely, there is a good chance it's going to be. I'm expecting bishop b5, and now possibly knight f6 will be. Now it's a big question. Knight f3. This is the Berlin defense. We were discussing in round 2 about this. That this could be. This is a very popular line, which was actually played in the big match of Kasparov-Kramnik. And Kramnik's, this was the biggest weapon which he decided to play against Kasparov. The other move was d4. Now, after rook e1, knight d6, I think we can expect the next about 8 to 10 moves to be flashed out pretty fast. Knight e5. Now black has, most likely he's going to play bishop e7. He wants to castle as soon as possible, which he's going to do. Bishop went back because it was under attack. Now black will be taking on e5 probably. And it seems like that Magnus is ready to play a long game, and probably it's going to be a game where he wants to take advantage in a very, very slow manner. And again, we are having actually a symmetrical position as in the previous rounds. This time is the the white and the black e-pawn disappeared so far. Knight takes, knight grab, the knight. Rook takes e5, obviously. Now black will be castling. Now there are different alternatives for white to play d4 possibly, or to play knight c3, or even to come back with the rook. d4, it's a very logical continuation, opening up the diagonal for the bishop. Of course, that's the idea for white, to develop as soon as possible. Black's problem, difficulty is with the d6 knight. That's the key element for him, how he can make space for the pawn move. Probably bishop f6 is going to happen.
Can you tell us why the e4 move surprised you?
Lately, I think Magnus was playing, of course, time to time he is playing e4, and maybe that's the reason he played e4, because maybe I was not the only one who thought it's going to be a surprise. Now rook e2, also to rook e1 was another possibility, but rook to e2, it can be useful later on, not to waste the tempo when later when the rook will be doubling on the e file. So this is already something he has in mind.
And how do you see the position now?
Well, it's still, actually rook e2 is a very rare line. Actually, what I see, it's only 4 games were played. It is some small surprise already for Karjakin, I think. This is already a sideline, side move within this Berlin defense. And this is the main idea for Magnus, to have really something very unpleasant for Karjakin, and for have it for a long time, this little pressure that I might get a little advantage, because this is psychologically is a very strong element to do this way. And it's also, of course, it worked out for Karjakin, and I think Magnus also checked it a lot and analyzed a lot this position also. But it is not sharp, is it not forced? So they both have to feel the position, what are the concrete moves. Now I think that knight f5 could be the move, attack the d4 knight, and after, let's say, white plays c3, then black could play d5. So after knight f5, probably white's plan would be to play d5 and keep space advantage, not to allow the bishop on c8, probably d6, and then that's how he would be opening up the diagonal for the bishop. But there's also another alternative for black, already instead of knight f5, to play possibly b6 and develop the bishop to b7 on the long diagonal. So this is already a choice what Karjakin has to make, but I'm pretty sure it's very hard for me to imagine that he was not looking this position and analyzing, and that that he didn't check this position and he never had this, it's very hard for me to believe. Also, a third option for black is to play rook e8 immediately to try to exchange the rook on the e file, but probably I wouldn't think that that's the best move. I think the two alternative between knight f5 and b6, which Karjakin is thinking of. But of course, we're going to see how big of a surprise is this rook e2 move to Karjakin, because so far he's only used a few minutes, but now, as we can see, he's holding his head. And I'm not sure what is the reason, whether he's trying to call back from his memory what is the best option.
But despite the fact that he's holding his hands, do you think he's happy with this opening?
I think he's not really thinking about whether he's happy or not. He's already focusing very much what is the best way not to allow Magnus to get what he's aiming for. Because both alternative is, it's not that, I can't even say that possibly one move is better than the other one, knight f5 or b6. But it's more, he's thinking, I think, psychologically, that what is the move which Magnus would be more happy with, the b6 structure or the knight f5, and that the pawn is going to be moved. So now, of course, he's already thinking for the long run what will be the outcome of the game later on, because he knows exactly that Magnus has all the energy and wants to press him for a long time. So we'll see. I'm really curious how he will react, Karjakin, on this move.
Then we have got visitors in the studio, chess journalist Leandro Garcia. So nice to have you here.
Thank you very much. Also for me, it's nice to be here. Thank you.
What's your impression of these World Championships so far?
Well, for the spectators, probably both first games were not very spectacular, but I think it was significant. At the first game, my impression was a confirmation of how well prepared Karjakin is. And at the second game, my headline was, Karjakin is not afraid of Carlsen. Because in a couple of moments, he had the opportunity to simplify the position and to force a quick draw, but he invited Magnus to complicate the game. And I think from the psychological point of view, that means that he is ready for a fight. He is not afraid anymore of Magnus.
What about today's opening?
Well, I was taking pictures, so I couldn't see the moves, but I think what Judith say, I'm sure is right about that.
Well, it's the Berlin defense, which we saw quite a lot of times in World Championship. As I mentioned, Kramnik's secret weapon was Berlin. And since then, since 2000, it was taken up by practically with all the top players. And it is really something, gives a hard time for White and provokes him to show how can you give advantage for White. And this is the huge challenge. And when we talk about advantage in this line, it's not about huge advantage. It's not something, it is so clear. Sometimes it's really so little that the main idea is just to press and that the opponent can't stand the pressure and then makes unnecessary mistakes.
The first thing we can say, I suppose, is that Karjakin is ready for a 5 or 6 hours fight today.
Well, he's that kind of character anyway, who is ready for a 5-6 hour fight, and Magnus is
Against
not less
Magnus.
ready. Yeah. And Karjakin is a great defender. Let's be realistic on that. I mean, he's one of the best defenders.
You've been in chess for 50 years, 40 years?
I was a semi-professional chess player for 10 years, and then in 1983 I became a journalist specialized in chess. So 33 years as a journalist, lecturer, presenter, commentator, and so on.
What's the biggest changes in chess from the time you started and now? Here we sit, 2016.
Everything related to the internet. I mean, it's a complete revolution. When I was a chess player, if I was going to play a round-robin tournament, let's say 10 players, then several months in advance, I had to send post mails in order to get information of my opponents, somebody from Romania or somebody from Canada, I don't know. Now I just write the name in my database, I put enter, and I have the list of all the games played by this player during the whole career. So it's a complete revolution.
What do you think about chess in schools and the development there?
Well, I have been dedicated to that very strongly in the last 10 years or so. We have several scientific studies and a lot of international experiences almost always getting to the same conclusion. Those children playing chess or being pupils of educational chess are improving their intelligence in multiple parameters, including the emotional intelligence, more than others. And they are also improving their academic performance, especially in mathematics and reading comprehension, which I think are two fields of extreme importance.
Me and Judith were talking about a 3-year-old Russian kid earlier this broadcast, and he should have a head start than Judith, this kid.
How old you said?
He's
3 years old, and he played a
old.
draw with Karpov on a TV show.
Well, but I think this is too much. I mean, for a 3-year-old, this is clearly too much. It's a very exceptional case. When we are talking about children between 2 and 5 years old, it's completely out of sense expecting them to play a chess game. But, and this but is with capital letters, chess is a fantastic tool to transmit a lot of values which are very important at that age, like laterality, psychomotricity, concentration, attention, memory, respect for the opponent, respect for the rules, first intention repression or control, logical thinking in a very elemental way, geometry, all that you can develop through a giant chessboard on the floor. And then the teacher has to use her or him, his own body to teach the children. And the children should become chess pieces themselves. And that is very good from the educational point of view. But pretending to show to teach the Sicilian defense to a 3-year-old, this is too much.
But it was interesting that he was playing with Karpov, and after move 3, bishop b4, Karpov asked him, "Do you know which opening is this?" And he said, "Yes, it's the Nimzo-Indian." So, well, there are exceptions. Of course, it is a very big exceptions, but we can find some kids who get really addicted at a very early age, 3.5.
Now we're talking about children, but all this you're talking about should be good for senior citizens as well, shouldn't it?
Yes, of course. There are also some scientific studies about chess and brain aging. It has been demonstrated, especially here in New York, at the Albert Einstein Institute. They observed 460 elderly people for 21 years. And they divided them in many groups. Some of them were learning foreign languages, others were learning musical instruments or going to the gymnasium or participating in debates and so on. The group which developed more their cognitive reserve, which is a kind of deposit we have in our brain, the fuller it is, the better you are prepared against Alzheimer's. Then the best group was the chess players, followed by the bridge players, and maybe this is very good news from some of our listeners, the third group were the dancers, because dancing requires a very good coordination between the brain and the rest of the body. Wow. But the leader of this group of neurologists, Dr. Virgis, in a Washington Post interview, said, "Very soon our doctor will recommend us a daily chess game, a daily crossword, and moderate physical exercise, and so on."
And these two guys at the board, Judith, then should be very old people.
Well, in this particular case, there is a problem, because the stress could be a negative factor.
Okay.
And, you know, all in general, any sport which goes to the very top, it means that you are bringing your body to the limit. in chess, you are bringing your brain to the limit, and the amount of stress is extremely high. So when I was talking about chess in order to delay brain aging, I'm talking about normal chess, not very top
Okay,
chess.
I see.
Okay.
What is Karjakin's brain trying to figure out now, Judith?
Well, at this point, he's thinking already for 12 minutes, and I think he's evaluating which is the best option, whether really to play knight f5 or b6. In the meantime, some other move came to my mind, possibly c6. But really, I think what Karjakin wants to figure out at the moment and analyzing in his brain that what can Magnus have in his mind, what kind of ideas he wants to have on the board, what kind and type of position he would be really happy with, or the most convenient situation would be, because he knows it exactly that it's going to be a long game, most likely. For sure, Magnus is ready to fight until move 90 or 110. I think he's very determined about that. And no matter whether how drawish position looks like or equal kind of position, he has his ideas, and he was working on this, and I'm pretty sure he was playing a lot of training games on this to feel how the middle game is going to develop, and also what kind of end games can be something to give him some advantage. So this game is definitely going to be about the nuances, about slowly, very slowly, or extremely slowly to build up something to give a really unpleasant time for Karjakin. That's the main idea from Magnus' point of view, and this is exactly Karjakin wants to avoid.
Mm-hmm. Having only one open line, what could be a good plan in order to create new weaknesses on Black's side?
Generally speaking, I think the main idea for white is to develop with the knight on c3, to develop with the bishop on f4, possibly later on maybe the f1 bishop can have some space after g4, but it's g3. I think it has to go very slowly, like let's say black would go knight f5, white would go, as I mentioned before, either c3 to protect the pawn, and then of course black would go d5. And then probably white would go bishop f4, black could go c6, let's say, white would go knight d2, and later on somehow with the plan of queen c2 to bring the rook on e1. For example, this is one of the most important in this line to how can you control the e5. Whether even though you don't do too much there, but in the long run it can be very useful. So this is a big challenge for black, how to exchange the rooks, for example. If he could exchange all the 4 rooks on the e5, then already there is a little relief for black. And also sometimes there are concrete ideas like even, but it's very rarely to play g4 and going concrete. But I think the main idea is to develop the way that he will control the e5. So that's one of the biggest battle in this game at the moment from the opening, whether what will happen with the e5, whether black can challenge there. And also one of the most important square in such a structure is the e5 square, where later on maybe the knight could come to e5, which can provoke the f-pawn to weaken the position. But that's already another 20 moves at least until we get to that stage of the game. And also there is another option which I advise to play possibly b6, and then trying to bring the bishop to b7. Probably white can go bishop f4 anyway, but it's interesting that b6 is not so much of Karjakin's style, I think. I think here we can say that I would expect from Karjakin to play knight f5. In the other hand, it's the most obvious move. And sometimes you don't want to make the most obvious move, what is the most natural for your opponent also, but you would like to try something out to make your opponent think, and that he also has to make some kind of decision. But this is very early still of the game.
Garcia, we've been talking about how the game between Carlsen and Anand was a game between generations, and this is a game between 2 youngsters. The most exciting for you with this matchup?
You mean comparing with?
Yeah, compared
Well-
to Anand and Carlsen matchup.
Anand is also a genius, but when he played Magnus, he was already on his decline. Statistically, after 35 or 40, you had less energy, right? So for Magnus, the second match against Anand was not very motivating because it was the second one against the same opponent. I think now he's much more motivated and he knows that Sergey is extremely tough, very well prepared, physically also tough, and I think psychologically he has improved a lot. And probably the fact that the President Putin himself and the Russian government in general are supporting him strongly, because President Putin has said already at least twice, I was there one of those times, he said that it's a priority for Russia to recuperate the domination in chess. So that gives to Karjakin a lot of psychological strength and responsibility.
But could this support also make Karjakin nervous? That he has
It
Russian
could.
chess on his shoulders.
It could, but I think he feels proud, because don't forget that he wasn't born in Russia. He was born in Ukraine. He got an offer from Russia. He got everything. He got, for instance, Kasparov's coach, Yuri Dohoyan, who is a very good one, of course. So he feels very motivated because of that. And I'm sure he's 100% of his shape here.
This is exciting, Judith.
Actually, it's interesting to say that at the candidates tournament, when Karjakin qualified, first of all, he has the ability to win the right game, which was exactly what happened in the candidates match. That his opponent made only one mistake in move 36, but he grabbed the opportunity and he won the game.
You mean Caruana?
Against Caruana, he
Yes,
played.
yes,
Sorry. And Karjakin won there. But it's not only that. It was, I think, maybe the first time, maybe not. But his performance was 2850 around the rating what Magnus Carlsen is.
Yeah.
So actually, sometimes he is able to give the maximum out and perform extremely well. That's very clear. If he wants to win this match, then he has to play games of his life.
Because on paper there's an 81-point difference. That's a lot.
Yeah, I think theoretically Magnus is one step ahead. Magnus is a genius definitely. Karjakin probably is not a genius, but his knowledge of chess is huge. So if Magnus is not at his best 100% level, then he's going to suffer seriously.
And Magnus being the world number one also means that he is the most stable chess player overall, obviously.
Yes, it's very clear that Magnus is extremely stable in the chess world, and if you look at the chart, he was really just improving, and once he got the number one seed in the world, only once or twice in the beginning, he switched to second place, but then in the last few years already, from 2010 or something, he's practically number one without a break, and actually there is a very big gap after him, which was extremely strange. For many years, I had the feeling that when he was already by far number one, he was around 2850. I still had the feeling that he didn't give everything into this game, and he can still increase. And then sometimes I had the feeling that he can reach the 3,000 rating points. And actually, I think once there will be some players who will be very much close to him in rating, probably that would inspire him to really go further with the rating, but at least over 2,900 possibly.
No, I fully agree with what Judith said. I think after following him since he was 12, I think, well, I think sometimes his problem is to get motivated because, over number one is nothing. So somebody has to tell him that if he's not number one anymore, his life will be much worse, and then he gets motivated. So actually, according to Judith, Magnus is potentially capable to beat the most difficult record of Kasparov, which is to be number one for 20 years in a row. But the big question is, what will happen if Magnus gets in love with somebody one day? Because
I remember it was the same question with me when I was playing.
Yeah, because
Did it affect you?
No, I think sometimes it can actually, you can even make a bigger step ahead. I mean, if the right person gets next to you, then I think it can give you wings.
But you know Kasparov very well. You know that although he was married, I think, 3 times, yes, his first priority was always chess. And this is almost unhuman.
Well, I think it's actually in all sports. I think it is, if you really want to go to the highest level and you believe in yourself and the team around you believes in your potentials, then actually chess or any other sport has to be number one. It overrides everything else, because when you do sport, you go to see a movie, you do other things, you do other activities. It's also kind of in order to optimize your ability to sit at the board for 5 hours or at the place where you really do your work, your passion, to excel as much as possible.
And Magnus is a person that, he thinks about chess all the time, but he really likes to have a life on the side. Could that be a good thing for him?
Oh yes, this is necessary, because you need not only a lot of technical knowledge, also a physical preparation, but also a psychological balance. Because if you don't get a psychological balance more sooner than later, then you will break down. To have a psychological balance is essential. And then, as you said, Magnus has let's say a normal life outside chess, and this is very important. Otherwise, it could be counterproductive for him as a chess player.
Yeah, I also believe that you're absolutely right to keep the balance, and I think somehow Magnus and his team, his father, his family, really found this great balance of. I think, for example, if you would take away sporting ability from Magnus, I think his rating would drop like 100 points. I mean, it really gives him it is so much of part of his preparation, physically and mentally, to keep the balance from this point of view. That I mean, they are really fantastic in keeping the balance, and that he's really happy. And you can see whenever he's giving a press conference, playing game, he just feels comfortable in.
I think it's the opposite.
Appearance.
The opposite case of Bobby Fischer. Bobby Fischer, in his 31st years of life, his life was only chess and nothing else. And then, of course, he was a big genius. His IQ was bigger than Einstein's one, but he became mentally ill. And probably, I have checked this with several psychiatrists, they told me if Fischer's childhood will be much more balanced, probably his mental health will have been much better as well.
The cliche picture
Finally,
of...
sorry.
Yeah, we have a move?
Finally, we have a move. Yeah,
okay.
After 25 minutes of thinking, Karjakin made a decision and played b6. And the main idea is, of course, that he decided that he wants to go with his bishop on the queen side to b7. It's interesting because it means that he doesn't want to play the symmetrical position only, as with the other option. If he would have played knight f5, this would have been the case, that practically he would be fighting how to equalize the game. With this move b6, I believe it was actually probably it was a very good choice from point of view that really it is not so symmetrical like the pieces is going to be in different sides. Bishop on b7 will give some tactical opportunity also for black possibly. And now we'll see how Magnus is going to improve his position or develop his pieces. Bishop f4 is the most natural move at first, but also he might be maybe bringing his knight to c3, and possibly later on one of the most obvious move for white once black is playing bishop b7 is the move d5. This is something which is very typical, and this is what Magnus is going to be playing for. But now also it's possible maybe c3 is an option, though at the moment I think b6 is also a good idea, because it's not only bishop b7 but bishop a6 is threatening to exchange the white square bishop, and then already it would be, the position would be more towards to equalize the game. So I'm very curious how Magnus will be deciding to continue the game against bishop a6. still, I believe bishop f4 is the most logical, but it's also possible that he might be going rook e1, but that wouldn't make too much sense because it would mean that white would be losing a tempo. And this is interesting how fast Magnus will be playing. And actually, he played rook e1. He played rook e1, which means to me that actually, you see, it is a completely psychological battle. He played rook e2, and it made Karjakin think, which direction should I go? To go knight f5 or b6? He spent 25 minutes on it. And after that, he played, after b6, he played rook e1, which is absolutely not a logical move because you're losing a tempo. You could make this move in one move. But he might be thinking, actually it was kind of obvious because bishop a6 was such a strong threat that he has kind of no other move. But this is something, I mean, it's typical. If not, Magnus would be sitting there. If no Magnus would be sitting there with white, but let's say a 2300 player, they would say, well, he better prepare better next time. But of course, it's not the case with Magnus. For example, with b6, Magnus could think and say that at the end, when you're going to play knight f5, I play c3, let's say, you're playing d5, the extra move b6 can give some weaknesses in your play in c6. And it is something, the extra move b6, it is simply a different game. Sometimes later on, white can play a4, a5 to open up the line. And actually, it is interesting that only one pawn got exchanged, but just by this pawn is one move ahead compared to the regular normal system. It gives a completely different approach. It gives completely different ideas for white to try to get an advantage. Of course, objectively, I believe it cannot be something, the best move to play rook e1 and after b6 rook e1. But psychologically, it took 25 minutes away from Karjakin.
That's interesting.
As you can see, only a genius can understand another genius. Right?
Yeah, that is true. That is true. Do you believe computer things like stockfish?
Sorry?
Stockfish?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you believe it? Do you believe in it?
Well, I use a stockfish. I have a daily column.
You have a new move?
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
We have a new move.
Yeah.
Karjakin played rook e8, which is a very common continuation in such a move. We are talking now exactly about who is going to control the e-file, and Karjakin wouldn't like to give this opportunity for white to really take control over. And now it's a question whether Karjakin will be exchanging, but I have strong doubts that he will not have an alternative to avoid the exchange of the rooks. So probably he will either take with the rook on e8, where black would have two options, but I think the most natural one would be knight e8, and then later on to either to play bishop b7 or open up with d5, the bishop's diagonal. Or the other option is to wait and play, let's say, bishop f4, or to play c3 and wait until black is taking the rook on e1.
Yeah, I'm using Stockfish and other programs like that in my daily work. I have a chess daily column in El País, the leading newspaper for Spain and Latin American countries. And I use Stockfish in order to double-check tactics. I mean, not for strategical ideas, of course, but for tactics. Of course, it saves a lot of time, and of course, it's 1,000 times more precise than myself.
Because now Judith Stockfish says that Magnus has a slight advantage.
I don't agree too much with it. No, to be honest, if black plays well, I think he can equalize in the next 5 to 7 moves. But of course, he has to play exactly the best moves.
Well, I suppose, Judith, everything depends on how do you configure the program. I mean, for instance, a space advantage should be a factor for the program, and then that could explain why it says there is a small advantage, right?
Yeah, but it's very difficult to calibrate the program the right way in some type of position. We got a move and bishop f4 was played. I was kind of sure that Magnus is not going to spend too much time. It is very obvious that for Magnus it can be even home preparation in the next 10 moves. That can easily be the case. And of course, it's not nice for Karjakin if he really has to work out all with his brain right immediately already here. Rook takes e1, queen takes e1. Now the d4 pawn is hanging at the moment, and black will have to decide whether to take it or not. Then there is interesting, maybe there is some tactical problem might occur for black, because white could take the bishop, the knight on d6, and after c takes d6, queen e4 is a double attack. The 8-8 rook, and the d4 bishop is under attack, but black could go continue with bishop b2. White could be taking the rook on a8. And interestingly enough, if black is taking the a1 rook, which is not obliged because the rook cannot go away, then bishop a6, and because of the pin, white is actually winning a piece already. So black will have to avoid this. After queen a8, it would be possible maybe to go away, queen f8, which is actually, it's getting incredibly interesting if the game goes this, but we can make sure 100% that Magnus is, actually this time it would be Magnus who catches Karjakin in home preparation. And the fantastic thing is that now knight c3 is the best move. And if bishop c3, then we can escape with the rook with an exchange up, and white would be winning. And after bishop takes a1, then knight d5, I guess, the move. And it becomes very extremely concrete, and actually it's a force to win for white. So actually Karjakin can make a blunder by taking the pawn on d4, which is extremely interesting. He will not do that because he will calculate all the lines here, and he also has the feeling for the game that he knows exactly that Magnus spent only few minutes. He has more time on his clock than he started with. And then I think bishop b7 might be the move, but later on it can be with a double pawn after bishop d6 cd, and again we might end up having double pawns.
But don't you think that Magnus catching his opponent at the opening is extraordinary news? I mean, it happens time to time only, right?
Yeah, it happens very rarely because he's looking forward for long games.
Yeah.
So he has a completely different approach with this.
Yeah.
But the opponent is spending time, spending a lot of energy on calculating. Of course, most of the time they don't end up blundering something. But Karjakin was already spending quite a bit of time previously. Now he's going to spend also again another 5 to 10 minutes. And then we'll see. And it's still very early in the game. We are only move 13. And of course, time is a very big part of the game.
Yes.
And this is also very clear that Magnus always plays pretty fast. And he knows that it can be a very serious factor, especially from move 30 to 40 in the time trouble if the opponent has time trouble.
Garcia, you said that it takes a genius to see a genius. What divides a chess genius from us normal people?
Well, you know, the day Fischer died, I was in Vakanzee in Holland, where every January we have one of the most important top chess tournaments being played there. And then my boss called me and said, Leoncho, you have to type as an animal because we are going to give you about 4 pages. Then I thought, well, what can I do? Something quick. And then as all the top players, the world top players were there, then I said, okay, first of all, I'm going to ask their opinion about Fischer. And the first one coming there was Magnus. He was at that moment about 17, I think. And then I asked him, what do you think about Fischer? And he said, well, what I admire more from Fischer is that he's able to make easy, apparently easy, what is in reality extremely difficult. And I am trying to imitate him. And then I thought, well, this is a genius making a description of another genius. Because what is to be a genius? To make apparently easy what in reality is very difficult. It's a good description, right?
Yeah.
Do you agree, Judith?
Yeah, it's an interesting approach.
Finally, Garcia, what kind of game do you think we're going to have today?
Well, after the last moves, it looks like Magnus today is really very well mentalized to go for it. It's not just a steady fight as it was the first game. And today, my prognosis is we are going to see a very interesting fight. Yeah.
That sounds perfect. Thank you so much for coming to the
It has been a real pleasure to be with you. Thanks a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then we will go to our reporter Kaja in the field. Oh, now, okay, we're not ready yet for that. We'll go to that pretty soon. But Judith, can you?
I'm happy to show you a trap.
Show us.
If I get my board
please
back.
do, please do.
And that how interesting that really in few moves it is possible, already 2 ways to blunder for Karjakin. Because if the black would move his knight to knight f5, which could be also a very natural move, then white would go bishop takes c7, and black would not be able to take because queen a8 mate. So it's very clear there is not so much of an option for black, to be honest, because knight f5 is a blunder, bishop d4 is a blunder, as we checked. So now most likely black has no better than to develop bishop b7, and really we are going to have the structure bishop d6, c takes d6, and then this can be really a long game. This can be something unpleasant for Karjakin. I mean, in some ways, again, Magnus is geniusly choosing an opening to give something, and this is his so special, how to give the opponent the critical point to think of. Actually, he played queen e7. Queen e7. I think he's going to exchange queen takes e7, and immediately we are ending up in a little kind of middle game without queens. And I think this is exactly what Magnus had in mind, that this is what he wants to play. Because Karjakin decided that he does not want to allow Magnus to make his pawns double pawn, to make it double them. Because that was Magnus's dream. So he doesn't want to give the opportunity that he gets what he wants or what he was aiming for. And now I'm expecting either knight c3 or possibly just taking on e7, bishop takes e7, knight c3 is a logical move, but maybe it's not the best move. Maybe Magnus would be putting the knight to somewhere else.
Tell us a bit about what you mean by unpleasant. Do you mean a long and complicated game?
Well, it's not going to be complicated really, but I would say it can be a long game and unpleasant. And in these positions, the biggest danger for black is that you know that you don't have a big disadvantage. It's not that you have a very bad position, but in every move you have to deal with the question, what should I make? Which move should I make? Do I make a weakness on the king side? Should I make a move with the g pawn, with the h pawn? Should I exchange one of the pieces, whether it's going to be a better game for me without rooks, or I should keep it? And then continuously you have to think about the future, what will be in the later stage of the game. So it is very stressy and it's very energy demanding. And of course, Karjakin knows exactly very well how dangerous Magnus can be in the 4th or the 5th hour.
You think he's thinking about the future now, going back and forth in the lounge?
Karjakin. Is it Karjakin?
Yeah.
Well, I'm not. I don't think he's too unhappy with his position. He's calculating lines. He's thinking out where the dangers can come from. And in the next few moves, it will be very clear how Magnus will place his pieces. Where is he going to develop his knight, and how fast is he going to bring his rook? Which will be, of course, a big question, because in such a position, it can be also that he will bring his rook to the e file, the only open file, or again, he's in the game, it will be the a rook will be playing by playing a4, a5, and open up the a line, a file. And actually, to be honest, by his body language, I have the feeling that maybe it's already a new position for Magnus, but I would be surprised if he wouldn't check this at least a bit. Maybe he has different alternatives when they stopped analyzing at this stage and they thought that there are different moves, like even knight a3 can be an alternative. And I mean, it happens quite a lot of times when we analyze a situation and we consider, well, okay, I'm not afraid of this move. I think white is just slightly better. I will play something. I have different alternatives. When it gets on the board, I will decide there.
Do you think they're equally happy / unhappy, both of them, at this stage?
I think Magnus is completely happy. I mean, this is exactly what he wanted to get, I think. And Karjakin is not too unhappy. Now, again, the real question will be how much Magnus will be able to press Karjakin. In the other hand, of course, Karjakin is one of the best defender in the world, and Magnus also knows this. It's very clear that he would want to win the game and decide already to have the first decisive game. But at the moment, they are both. None of them think about this. I think they have to be very alert to know exactly where to put their rooks and the pieces in order to equalize from Karjakin's point of view, or to try to press as much as possible.
I don't know if you can say if Magnus fears anything, but
There is no way he fears
but
about.
Karjakin's defending abilities is something closest to what Magnus fears.
He knows it. He knows it that it will be extremely difficult to crack Karjakin. He knows it that it is really a very difficult challenge for him, and this is one of the most interesting for me to see how Magnus would be cracking Karjakin's defense, because it is true that with this match they are both extremely young. They both have a lot of energy and they are both very well prepared. And you can't say that we enter into the fifth hour and then the opponent will crack because he doesn't have enough energy and gets tired, as it happened with Anand, for example.
I love these pictures when the world champion and the challenger are sitting in each room just thinking what to do next. How will this game be? I like the tension in this.
Yeah, I think they were very tense in the beginning of the game, and then after a short time, now it's very clear that they are very much into the game, and they both know what came out, what kind of structure is going to happen, and how is it really possible to take advantage or have advantage for white. It is really, there is very, very, very slight advantage possibilities for white, and there are many games in this system where white is trying, but with every move.
Okay, then Judith, I think we'll take a leap into the field. So Kaja, go ahead.
Yeah, we're out in the field, and there's just been a press conference in the building. We have Kate Murphy. She's the CEO of Play Magnus. Can you tell us what this press conference was about?
Today we launched Magnus's second app, the Magnus Trainer, and this product was all about teaching and learning chess and training, absolutely.
So we know the Play Magnus app where you can actually play against Magnus. What is new with this one?
So the Play Magnus app is for people that know how to play chess already. You play against Magnus at different ages. The trainer is about learning everything from the absolute basics and then moving up for more advanced players. How does Magnus think towards his own games? So coming into strategy, he will tell you about why I chose to do this move in this position, for instance.
So people around the world can now actually have the world champion as their personal chess trainer.
Exactly, that's the idea. One of Magnus's goals is to get more people interested in playing chess. So having him as your personal coach, I mean, how cooler could it be? How more perfect?
And we also have to ask you, how many downloads have you had for the Play Magnus app?
The original app is just hovering around 1 million now. So I expect during the course of these next few weeks that we will hit our 1 million.
And I heard the rumor that it's downloaded in almost every country?
Almost every country except for for North Korea and South Sudan. Yeah.
If people download this app, what's it actually going to look like? How's it going to work?
Well, it's a trainer. So you come in and you take it like a course. So you'll actually come in, choose your level. You'll say, hey, I'm an absolute beginner. I don't even know how the pieces move. Or I've played chess for years. I'm more advanced. And you'll get set into a certain area in the course and you can start working through that way with mini games and attached theory.
You gotten any better at chess working with this?
Absolutely. When I started my job, I didn't know how the pieces moved. Truthfully, I didn't. So with this, working with this company and then through this trainer, yeah, I've actually been reading through the theory and finding it really interesting.
And you say you want to use chess to make the world a smarter place. Do you think this is going to do that?
Well, looking at all the studies around chess and how it improves the mind of youth, looking at different studies around analytical thinking, problem solving, and the chess trainer is going to be doing just that, training chess, training those analytical skills. And so we see that absolutely if kids are spending their time on the trainer, then they're training their brain more than they would on a game like Candy Crush or something like that.
So that's perfect. So Magnus is going to help us get a little bit smarter, Knut.
That's very nice, Kaja. And 1 million downloads, Judith. Magnus Carlsen is getting a very, very strong market position.
Yes, it's a great thing. I think that anybody can download and see such a things, and there are actually there are a lot of websites also, and there are a lot of places where you can play chess. So actually, there's a big variety of places through the internet and different apps where you can learn the game, and it is of course extremely nice to have one from the world champion.
Yeah, now we can go in and train from the very bottom level, and that has to be positive to reach out to the people.
Yeah, I think this is one of the most important. If somebody gets interested about the game, then they find different platforms where they can get the first steps and they can be inspired, and really they can learn from move to move, step by step, while they are enjoying the process of learning it. And then later on they have the opportunity to play either on the internet or through the app, or go somewhere physically and really experience the real chess tournament.
And the guy with the app has now been thinking for over 10 minutes for this next move.
Yes, Magnus, I have the feeling that he really ended up in this situation that during the preparation he thought that, okay, if black plays queen e7, I do something at the board and I will decide there. And there is quite a few alternatives for him. Not much, but there are nuances which makes the difference. Of course, queen e7 is the exchanging the queens. It will be pretty obvious that in the next 1 or 2 moves it will be exchanged. The question again is the same question what we had before when the rook was standing opposite to the white rook on the e-file. The question was whether white is taking the rook or white waits, Magnus waits until black is capturing the rook. And now it's exactly the same question. Whether is it better for white, for Magnus to capture the queen first, or is he going to make a move before and let the opportunity for black to capture the queen, and that's how it will be exchanged. I think there are some alternatives like the most natural move, of course, it's queen takes e7, really to exchange the queen right on the spot now. But maybe there are other options to develop, for example, with the knight to a3, or well, the most natural would be, of course, to exchange the queens and develop to d2, a3, or c3 with the knight, and then bring the rook to the center. But every move has its very valuable time, so it's very clear that Magnus cannot waste time if he really wants to get a game with advantage, or at least really to press Karjakin in this game.
We have been playing for almost 1 hour now. Can you please, for new viewers, sum up the first hour of chess?
There was an interesting opening. Well, e4 started Magnus, where some of us maybe were not expecting this, but of course it's a part of his repertoire. And the Berlin defense, of course, it was absolutely not a surprise by Karjakin, as even I played some games with him in this defense. And of course, both players were extremely well prepared, because this Berlin defense is famous for that it's incredibly difficult to crack it. It's like a very solid opening for black. And white is having big difficulties since 2000, since the Kasparov-Kramnik match, where Kramnik practically won the match because choosing this opening. And then white chose a solid line where the game is becoming completely symmetric on both sides. There is only one open line, the e-file. And the big challenges in this game position where white can press and get some space advantage and have the opportunity to really give a hard time for black, and with little moves improve his position, while black is of course continuously challenged, and he would like to equalize by exchanging as many pieces as possible. And also it's important not to allow most of the time to exchange the bishop for the knight and allow that black would be having double pawns on the d file. Well, there are, I think, like at least 80% of the games, maybe more in the Berlin defense, is finished with a draw. But to be honest, it is also possible for black to win these positions. But most of the time, it very rarely happens that white can really excel and win a nice game. But you never know. I think in the next 5-6 moves, we'll see whether Magnus will be able to get a little small advantage.
And you never know with Magnus Carlsen playing chess. You never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Of course, he's very careful, but he has all the energy and ambition and drive to show what can he show on the chessboard, and he feels extremely the details of the game. And it comes, I think, from the fact that he loves the game. He's incredibly optimistic about his game. Knight c3 happened, so he didn't want to exchange the queen on e7, but he prefers to leave the choice again. So this is also very typical by Magnus, that he always tries to make a move which keeps the tension and gives the opportunity for the opponent to make a decision. And this is very important because, of course, if the opponent has to make a decision and has quite a few reasonable alternatives, then it takes a lot of energy. Bishop b7 immediately. So Sergey is also saying that I'm not going to grab your queen. So we keep the tension. And it's now it's a battle whether who will take the other's queen, because it's pretty much clear that it will be taken, or that's what I'm thinking that it would be happening, because if white goes out from the exchange, let's say queen d2, then suddenly rook e8 and black would have a fantastic position, because suddenly black is taking over the e file and white can not afford this. As we talked about it before, this is one of the most important part of the system, that who is controlling the e file. That's why I'm expecting that probably queen takes e7 would be the move. And after bishop e7, now I'm curious whether, let's say, Magnus would be playing a4 and trying to take advantage of the fact that the black pawn on b6 and trying to play a5 later on. But that's more of an unusual option. Or he's going to play the more natural way of controlling the e file, and then black again has to make a decision whether to move the bishop to f6 or to make king f8 move. So it's every move, and Karjakin will have to make a decision, which is not easy, because one move or the other is not very big difference between the two. It's not a blunder, it's just a small decision to make.
You just summed up the first hour, but what does this first hour promise for the next?
For the next hour?
Yeah.
I think in the next hour we'll see definitely if the game will be a draw, or it's going to be something where Magnus can squeeze, unless he's going to misplay it and Karjakin will be having a nice position.
How fast and how quickly can we probably see that?
I think in the next few moves, I think we are going to see already something about that, because after exchanging the queens, or after the... Yes, and Magnus took on e7, which we were expecting. Of course, the Karjakin is not at the board, that's why he's not playing instantly taking back the queen, which he's doing now. And now it's a question how Carlsen really wants to play. I wouldn't be surprised if he would play very fast the move rook e1. That's the most natural way of continuing the game. In the next really few moves, we'll have to see every move. If black is making the accurate moves, then he shouldn't have big problems. Even small problems maybe he can avoid. But a4, this we were discussing, that this is an alternative. And it's again, he made a move where again he makes Karjakin to make a decision.
Make a decision, yeah.
Again, he's making a move to make it more interesting. And it's always very critical in this kind of position when you get a4 or you get similarly on the other side, whether to allow a5 or to block the white pawn. And it is a very serious, decisive, it can be decisive decision by black. And it is really, really fantastic to see how Magnus is making moves in each move somehow to make Karjakin think and have to decide how to react on this. Whether is he going to really make a committal move like a5? As we know, the pawns never move back, so it's something that he really have to decide whether he blocks it or he allows white to play a5.
Okay. Again, Magnus Carlsen made Sergey Karjakin make a decision. When we will be back from a short commercial break? Maybe Karjakin has done the decision. We'll see.